Welcome, guys. How are you?
We're good. I'm good. I don't know how Alex is. I'm good.
I'm great. I'm in Palm Springs. Not Palm Springs. I'm in the desert now. I'm in 29 Palms.
Is that kind of little hotel thing called 29 Palms?
There's more than one hotel.
That's a fun spot. I like it.
It's very nice. I like the desert. It's peaceful.
Okay, we got a lot to get to today, so I want to get started.
Got a lot on the docket.
The vacation travelogue has been fascinating. Maybe we cut it out. Maybe we leave it in. All right, let's get started. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms. I'm Brian Morrissey, joined as always by Troy Young and Alex Schleifer. We're going to have an anonymous banker is coming on later. I'd like them to discuss golf media because banking, golf seems like it makes a lot of sense. And I think golf is actually really interesting. We want to get started, a little bit of a carryover from last week, although we got some negative feedback, and I'll share that in a little bit. But one of the things I think I got wrong about the decentralization of media was this assumption that I had that in a world flooded with content, expertise would naturally rise in value. And the idea was like there's more noise, so the signal will emerge, it will be more valuable than ever. And there's definitely examples of this, but I think what it's led to is the creation of what Alex expertly branded and Troy tried to rip off as the Hyperpundits. And I'm going to do my best of sort of framing this, but to me, I think it's a flattening of hierarchy, and punditry works better than, say, like news reporting in this kind of environment. First of all, it's scalable, it's flexible, and it's cheap. The margins are great on punditry. Kara Swisher probably makes orders of magnitude more doing hyperpunditry than she did when she was running a news operation at Recode. Same with Scott Galloway. I mean, I give this guy a lot of credit. I remember watching his videos when he was doing at L2, that luxury consultancy, and I was like, why is this bald guy doing these videos? People don't want to look at that. And he just put in the 10,000 hours, became really good at it, and then didn't stay in his lane. I mean, he's now got like Prof G markets. He like holds court on politics. He's going to reinvent masculinity.
He's telling the young men how to
Hey,
do
Brian,
all sorts of
as
things.
a sign of the times, I kind of found this staggering, and maybe we can answer your question about whether you were wrong or not around expertise, because I don't think you're wrong. But Scott interviewed the Prime Minister of Canada on his Prof G pod yesterday.
Yeah.
I just think that's like a kind of important sign of where we're at.
Well, Jason Calacanis had to buy all these suits because, you know, they're like interviewing like cabinet secretaries and hanging out at the White House. Although it seems like when they go to the White House, Jason doesn't get invited. But this is, you know, part and parcel of this world.
Jason seems like a guy that doesn't get invited to parties.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that. But, you know, just a couple of weeks ago, we had, you know, Nick Denton on, and he was like a short seller. I kept trying to ask him about media, and he kept wanting to like go over to like the Chinese battery production statistics and whatnot. And that's just the way of the world these days. And to me, this is the way I look at it. And then I want to get into the conversation. This is just another market that has just been democratized. And it's the marketplace of ideas has become this insane bazaar. And that was because the supply was always artificially constricted. Now, it's always one of those be careful what you wish for. But to me, the expert class, in quotes, they're going to just need to compete with these information entrepreneurs. Like there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. So like whining about the fact that venture capitalists, you know, are holding forth on Ukraine and all the rest of it isn't really going to do much. I mean, the experts have to get better at what the information entrepreneurs are running laps around them at. And that's mostly in presentation and format and being able to mix it up. And look, infotainment has always done better than like quote unquote hard news. So I don't think this is anything particularly new. So I want to give it first to you, Alex, since you coined the term hyperpundit. I think there's some controversy about that, but I think you did.
There's no controversy about that. We have the receipts.
I think actually the AI invented it and you appropriated it.
No, I mean, that's the risk though. Like you go out and you start using my term without telling who it is. And then
I didn't do it.
you ask AI and they say,
We're getting into the decline of IP next. So we can circle back.
But first, Brian, what was you said we had some blowback.
Oh, well, the negative feedback was, because nobody stays in their lanes. And so but to me, we obviously this is media and tech and culture. So that's very broad. And
Right.
you can't avoid the overall environment. Otherwise, you're just going to be myopic. And so I think last week we had a very, I thought it was an enjoyable discussion about expertise. And Troy had it should be like a viral, would it be a screed, Troy? What was it?
it's
Like
screed.
about Chamath Palihapitiya. I think it was a screed. Anyway, there was some politics in there, but I didn't think it was too heavy politics. But I got an email from a listener. I'll keep them anonymous. And this is what it said. Brian, the PVA pod is just a very bad political show. Between Alex and his Trump/Elon derangement syndrome and Troy's embrace of the clearly impaired Taylor Lorenz, you have all lost the PVA plot. The show was great. Using the past tense there is tough. Although this correspondent did say that they're happy that my other podcast seems insulated for now. But that was, I guess, a bit of a threat. And they urged, go back and ask why PVA exists. And I bet you'll find there isn't much of a reason if you break down the last 6 months of shows. So there's that. I don't know if I totally agree on all of that. But I do think that is just a sign of the times. I mean, you can't, to me, I like this show because we can go into a lot of different areas.
Comments?
Troy, I mean, you got compared to Taylor. What is it that your Taylor? This is offensive to both you and Taylor.
It's more to me. It's an absurd note. But no, we appreciate the feedback, but I don't, likening me to Taylor Lorenz. I mean, Alex does have Elon derangement syndrome, so I think that's fine.
I mean, it's true, and I have no reason for it. It's absolutely fine. He's fine. He's fine.
Alex,
he's fine.
I didn't mean to trigger you, Alex. Let's focus on the question.
I'm not triggered. He's fine. He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
He's fine, right? Like we all like him. He's fine.
Okay, but this is
funny.
a symptom. This is a symptom.
Funny thing?
This is happening again. It's happening.
Hang on. The funny thing, the irony. I just want to point out the irony of someone telling you to stay in your lane when you're complaining about Elon staying in his lane. Like, when he was done building rockets, he decided to reformat the government. So, we all have opinions, man. I don't know who this is.
But I think that is a core of this, is we do all have opinions and we got our hot takes and whatnot. But I think that gets at the heart of what becomes hyperpunditry. And I think it is an enduring feature of the information space. So unpack it for us, Alex. This is your term. This is trademarked.
Yeah, unpack it. I don't know. This podcast, we say it's about the intersection or the patterns in media, technology, and culture. So we're going to talk about media, technology, and culture. And unfortunately, or fortunately, these are very broad topics. It's a very kind of wide circles that form this really broad Venn diagram. And I wish we could have, I wish I was part of more of a focused tech podcast. I like talking about this stuff, but unfortunately,
no offense taken.
No, I mean, it's mostly because that's what I know most about. And I appreciate that I don't know much about a lot of the other topics, but what happens is things are constantly brought into the fray. It's impossible to talk about culture and media without slipping into politics. It's very hard to keep your opinion away from your takes. But I don't want to kind of dwell too much on that email. I kind of regret asking you to read it, actually. But feedback is always welcome, but not always agreed to. I think the challenge for me with those new types of pundits is that there are no real stakes, because you don't really have to be right? I think a lot of the tech journalists that I used to read, and even Kara Swisher, used to have takes, and they were playing within their field, and therefore that was their currency, that they would exist within tech, and the quality of their takes in tech would build up the equity that they had in that market. But right now, everybody has is able to be brought in and delivers so much content it's kind of hard to track what bullshit Scott Galloway might have said. He might say 80% of stuff that sounds correct, and then it gets all chopped up, and he has opinions about everything. So it's hard to grade those people. I think that's part of that challenge for me. And whether it's Chamath or Scott or any one of these guys, everybody's got opinion about everything, and that's a part of that is because we're kind of in the middle of it because culture, technology, and media has all blended together. Like, the business of media, everybody participates in it. We're seeing kind of these, 100-year-old brands that are, competing against kind of dudes in their bedrooms. Everybody has access to technology. Everybody has opinions. And it's made this market where the only thing that you really need is some form of measure of success. So it could be, this guy's got 16 million Twitter followers. Scott Galloway and Chamath are both rich guys. Like the amount of the pipeline from rich guy to influencer is huge because rich guys immediately get more attention. Immediately, their words come out truer because they say, well, this person's rich. The amount of times that I hear that, well, he is a billionaire, he must know, right?
Well, maybe that's the new credential. You don't need
it's the new credential,
the PhD.
Well, but let's deconstruct it in maybe a bit different way, talking about what, trying to understand why. And the first is, Brian, I think that if you're going to read about something, expertise does really matter, right? Expertise in, articulating a position through well-crafted argument in, a written format. And so I think that, faced with a lot of options, in what you consume from, people putting, text-based content primarily out into the internet, you're going to go to where you find substance and expertise. I think that once you move to, audio and video, it's a very different equation. And that's why comedians do so well here, because your ability to engage in banter back and forth, to, juggle both sides of a position without maybe the depth, substance, bona fides, whatever, becomes, the thing that wins in the medium. And then as, institutionalized media starts to disintegrate, where do people that are important, like this is, it's pretty interesting, right? Like, where does Carney, the prime minister of a big country, go to be heard in America? And he's going to go to where the people are. And, so is Scott Galloway a credible interviewer? I think he can do an okay job in that forum. Does he have, the structure and all of the things that we would expect in institutional media to prepare for that discussion and, to maybe intersect it with, experts or, provide the right kind of forum? Maybe it's not perfect, but it's still a place for discussion. And we're seeing this kind of emergence of this kind of public commons where people kind of talk it out. And so then we see, and we know that the first and most important thing is, as you said, this kind of infotainment equation. That's why you see the emergence of debate, because debate is something that creates, tension and throws the audience into the frame, because now I can take a side, I can participate. But also, we're getting this other sort of slightly performative thing where Ezra Klein goes on the All In podcast, right? Where Steve Bannon is invited onto the Newsom podcast.
Yeah. It's the man in the arena.
Yeah. And is it a display of courage from Ezra? Is it a sort of, is it his social obligation that he feels he needs to defend the virtues of liberal, thinking inside of the lion's den? I'm not quite sure is he promoting the book? I think sort of all of the above, right? But really what's happening is podcasting has, in my mind, it's sort of like if text, like democratic publishing of, upended media, like legacy media, podcasting is building on that, right? Like now all of the people that are in my podcast feed, I mean, some of them may be monetized by established media like Vox, but they're all independents. Like no one listens to, maybe you listen to like morning update from NPR, but you're not listening to like CBS podcasts. You're not listening to Fox podcasts. You're listening to independents. The structure is completely broken down. And therefore, the people that win from an audience perspective are the ones that have, manufactured a product that travels. And so that's what's going on.
I mean, it's kind of like the packaging is almost more important than the what used to be the substance of the product, right? Which is, to me, indicative of where we are just overall, right? Like the tariffs have brought very clear that most of our companies in America don't make anything. They're brands, and they might design it or something. They might send the CAD design over to the supply chain in China. I don't know if you've seen all these TikTok videos from the OEM manufacturers, which, by the way, has been a great advertisement for those who want to ban TikTok, because it's very clear what the Chinese government could do with TikTok, for instance, to get their viewpoints in front of the American people. But they've all been basically, pulling back the curtain on the fact that none of these quote unquote luxury brands make anything really. I mean, they might do a little bit of final stitching in Italy, but it's all done in China. And, they got really mad, I think, for a good reason, when JD Vance called them peasants. I've never been to China. Everything I see from there, they're not peasants. They've got some, I saw some drone delivery. Somebody got a cheeseburger delivered by drone. Anyway, I think that is part of all of this, in that the packaging in some ways becomes more important than the substance. And I think when you're talking about this, when you talk about infotainment, the being able to package an argument and being entertaining and being compelling is more important than being credentialed, without it.
Yeah, I mean, which is why I kind of think Troy's point, and we had another email from someone who mentioned that. I mean, Troy's point last week was that, sometimes he wants to hear from the economist or from an economist or a scientist about a scientific topic. But I think pundits were never that. And if they were economists and scientists, they might have not been the best one, but they were definitely the most entertaining, right? And it is entirely entertainment. But the challenge I have, and I wonder if it's like, do you think it's kind of the death of the, we've talked about this before, there's the death of the written word, and the fact that even that term podcast is not the right media format. Those are like just little shows. They exist on, they're distributed on podcasts, they exist on YouTube, etc. And because of the format, because of the long form format, there's a lot less scrutiny on what's being said. Like, I know that if we had to record a 20-minute podcast that then had to be transcribed into something readable, I would definitely fail. Right.
Well, you're actually arguing against yourself. You're the anti-writing person on this podcast.
I'm not the anti-writing.
I'll turn on you.
Just go ahead. This is what makes it's a good infotainment.
I know what retails.
No, but Brian said he's calling you illiterate.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't go that far. Although that might work.
Yeah.
No, but you're anti-writing, because to me, like, writing, the reason that Jeff Bezos has this thing about writing out everything in a memo is because you can't hide. When you have like shitty logic, you cannot hide it in writing if someone knows how to truly do critical reading. Whereas you can do all kinds of performative, hand-waving stuff verbally, and particularly when in person too. I mean, like, there's people who were always great at meetings, right? And like, then you started unpacking, you're like, oh, that's just like charisma and confidence. There's like literally no substance here. We've all had that experience, I think.
Yeah, I just was sort of breaking down, maybe you guys can help me, like what would have happened before. So Mark Carney has a agenda. And so Mark Carney has legions of PR people and, foreign service people that would say, how do we influence this, evil country that's, tanking our economy? And so Mark Carney has to go somewhere, do something, travel to Washington, get on CNN, I don't know, do a long form interview on 60 Minutes or something. And there used to be a structure for that, or maybe it was less important before because we didn't hash these things out in public. And so you have basically a new mechanism for someone that has an old-fashioned PR objective. Like, the prime minister of a country wanting to influence the dialogue in another country. And then you have a different kind of thing where a whole new kind of legion of entitled sort of quote unquote first principle thinkers out of Silicon Valley who've succeeded in building a product and accumulating wealth, now asserting themselves, which is the big shift that's happened in Washington on the public space, right? So this is, everyone that's got money and influence from Silicon Valley kind of marching on Washington. And there it's a different thing because you've got a new type of participant in this kind of information space wanting to influence policy and how we think. And that ranges from, people that have been absorbed into Washington like Sachs, to the guys in the All In podcast, to, like, I would argue, Palmer Luckey on being interviewed by Rick Rubin and advancing, his new kind of point of view on the failure of the American kind of military industrial complex, right? Like, and where would Palmer Luckey have gone before to do that? It didn't exist.
I mean, he would get like a Fortune article or something.
Right, massively processed through a machine.
Yeah,
I mean, he'd need to write here's what it used to happen. You'd write a book, and then you'd do a press tour, and you'd repeat your talking points on that press tour. You'd get some media training to make sure that you get all your points across, and you do that for a month and a half, right? Isn't that what people would do?
Sure.
Probably.
But now it can be, I'm going to drop a tweet, and then I'm going to go, and I'm going on these podcasts. Everybody wins because, even Ezra Klein appearing on the All In, that's audience capture in a lot of ways. We bring an audience that has less of an overlap with ours, and so it grows our audience. Everybody wins, and everybody's in on it because Ezra Klein also wants to do audience capture. And now, it's, our governor here in California has his own podcast, so that becomes the deal with him. Yeah, and now I wonder how many.
It really is bizarre. And it got me thinking because I would contrast two types of formats or podcast formats because I listened to them back to back yesterday in the car. And one was Newsom interviewing Rahm Emanuel, who is a very compelling speaker and may well be the Democratic candidate for president. And so it was kind of interesting because they're both vying for that, right? But with Newsom, what you get is, I think he was civil to Bannon, in some ways engaged them. This is one of the problems on the left where they've been effectively deplatformed by Trump, and they're trying to figure out where they sit alongside, right-wing media or right-wing, kind of the right-wing influencer class. But you've got a guy doing a podcast who has an agenda. Newsom has an agenda. So he brings that to his podcast, as opposed to Rick Rubin, who just comes as a sort of like music kind of geek who doesn't know anything and just asks good questions. And so he sits and he gives Palmer Luckey an immense amount of space and just tries to find a way to guide the conversation by not really saying anything, not having a point of view, not inserting himself into the debate, but just giving someone a platform with really intelligent prompts, which I would sort of say probably mirrors how he operates in the studio. I'm not here to make music for you. I'm here to help you make the best music you can make.
Yeah. The problem with that is that there are absolutely no boundaries to what's being said. There's no attention to what's being said. I think Lex Friedman is also guilty of that, playing the I'm just here to listen. But what you're creating is you're packaging a media product for people, and you're authenticating the stuff that's being said just by having it on your podcast. Because the format is meant to be debate, right? The format is not just Troy, you must have done it. It's the fireside format where you go in, it's a friendly crowd, somebody's just prompting you so you can say things, right? So you can kind of frame your argument to the audience. And by doing that, you're legitimizing whatever content comes out of your mouth, because that person on the other side is not there to debate you, right? Rick Rubin and Lex Friedman oftentimes just are incredibly passive and just reinforce the thing that you're saying. And I think that's a disservice to the audience, honestly.
But who are you to say, honestly? Like, I mean, that's just preference. But why is one better than the other? I mean, there's plenty of adversarial interviews out there. I mean, why can this format, this approach not exist alongside and be additive? I think you get different. I don't expect Theo Von to be grilling Trump on the intricacies of the tariff policy. I mean, I'd actually like to see that, but I don't expect it.
So here's the thing. I don't disagree with you. The problem is that when there's so much choice and there's so many ways of getting my message out there, I'm not going to go to the one that gets grilled. I'm not going to do the 60-minute interview anymore. I'm not going to go to the thing that's actually going to,
Which is why the Ezra thing was
back.
cool, Alex. Because like Sachs came at him and Larry Summers. Like it had the feeling of a kind of hostile debate club in high school.
So who won?
Well,
Nobody wins. Nobody wins in any of
no
these
one
things.
ever wins. It's like, did you enjoy the performance?
Yeah.
And
Were
I
you
think-
entertained? That's what's important. And the important thing is to have the clips that your supporters can use to validate their viewpoints. That's the end goal. So I don't
But do you
really
think that's valuable? I mean, do you think that's...
Well, I had a little back and forth with Ben Smith about that. Like, he just sent me like 3 words about it. But like, he had on Jubilee Media's CEO, Jason Lee, and they do a lot of these debate things. They're almost like that. Like, do you know Lily Phillips, the like porn stars, like sleeping with 1,000 dudes in a day or something? It's like the stunt thing. Like even like porn now has this like element of the spectacle element.
You gotta get picked up by the algorithm.
It never had it before.
Well, I don't know. I haven't followed. This is outside of my lane. So I'm going to defer to you on that one.
We found one thing that was outside of Brian's lane.
Yeah, exactly. There's just no market for that. I'm smart enough to know that. But they do a lot of these videos, like Pete Buttigieg. I don't know how to say his name still.
That poor porn star's father. I mean, God, that's horrible.
It's the marketplace.
Awful.
Look, it's a very crowded marketplace. You got OnlyFans has like exploded that. And so again, it's competitive like any of these marketplaces. But Jubilee Media does a lot of this with Pete Buttigieg trying to convince 35 undecided voters, or Charlie Kirk taking on like, I don't know, like 100 like angry Gen Z women. And to me, it's spectacle. It's not, and that's fine. Like, and the reality is, like you said, you're not going to have Cheetos for dinner, but like you can have Cheetos for dinner. Like if you want to have Cheetos for dinner, nobody's going to stop you from having Cheetos for dinner. So, ultimately, I think that this needs to be hashed out by people just choosing to have a more nutritious information diet. And I understand that in the marketplace, just like in food, fast food does well because it's convenient, it's cheap, it's got a lot of carbs, and it's satisfying in the moment.
I don't think we should expect people to go out and choose the best information diet. I think at the very least with food, you have some sort of labeling. I mean, here you don't. It's really hard to understand what is a valid source. I mean, I don't even know. I know that I'm picking off my biases and the thing, I listen to what I want to hear, and I totally get the thing where you go into a debate, then it's so funny. Every time there's one of those left versus right debates, you'll find little clips on YouTube and you say, Destiny destroys right-wing pundit. And then, the other one is like, Charlie Kirk destroys Destiny. It's the same fucking thing. It's the same fucking interview. And of course that's the deal. And we've talked for a long time on this podcast about everything being entertainment. And that's what's winning right now. And it's definitely reinforced by the way the algorithms work, right? And what they surface. But I don't know if it's really practical to have a healthy media diet these days. I don't think mine's entirely healthy.
But I do think it plays into something that you've astutely mentioned before, which is the participatory nature of media that is ascendant right now. I mean, if you look at, just take like the Minecraft movie. What is it called? A Minecraft movie. It's getting all these kids to go out there having like mini riots in the theater. Like it's a participatory experience. I mean, Mr. Beast built like his empire on basically content that's a game. Taylor Swift concerts are rituals. Fox. Did you see this new Fox? It's like a game show / reality show that they're making. I think this is a great idea. They basically locked 4 people in some sort of upstate asylum right after the inauguration until recently. And then they're surfacing them, and then they're going to have a game show in which they try to guess which headline is real.
This is a
and which
brilliant concept.
It's just fake. I think it's super smart.
It's super smart. It also sounds like something made up for a dystopian movie, doesn't it? It's just crazy. It is amazing, though. I got to give it to them. That sounds very watchable.
So really what it is an admission that you cannot predict the shit that we're experiencing right now. So we're going to put people in a box and then expose them to the reality of our times just to show you how ridiculous and crazy this simulation
I love it.
is.
I love this stuff. I mean, I liked even the David Blaine stuff. So like, I'm a sucker for this.
Sure.
It's like that Japanese World War II soldier that was discovered, 20 years after the war ended.
So Alex, what is your take? Like, what is participation is the point, right? Like, so to me, that's the interesting. It's like, how do you design media around participation? Because this is a real challenge for the industrial side of media, where all the processes, all of the skill sets, all of the rewards were around really a passive one-way experience. And this participatory experience, and you're from the video game world, like it's not one that comes easily to a lot of people from the traditional media industry.
No, it's actually, it's across media and art. And we talked last week about, I mentioned how superstardom or the traditional concept of a superstar, kind of like this, like A-lister, George Clooney, is going away. It used to be like everybody kind of and with that, a lot of like the paparazzi stuff is going away as well. There were these celebrities that nobody had access to, right? And you knew them for being famous, and you really wanted access to them. So the way to get access was through, either a late night interview or Vanity Fair cover or a paparazzi shot. And like that stuff I feel is slowly dying, because the act of celebrity right now is the act of access, right? YouTubers start with, hey guys, they're talking straight to their audience. They're communicating straight to their audience. Destiny has these feeds where, chat is just like running while he's having an interview with someone. And it's all become just like this parasocial access game where you're connecting with your audience. You bring your audience along with you, when you go for an interview somewhere else, which is why that whole exchange works so well. You jump on my podcast and bring some of my audience with you. They jump, and then we do the same game in reverse. And so having that audience that you carry along with you and communicating with them and managing them through all sorts of ways, right? I think we want to do more stuff on Substack. We want to do more stuff between podcasts and newsletters where we communicate with our users. We definitely have users that have followed us since the beginning, that send us notes, that don't feel like this kind of traditional, like we're making media, we're putting it out there and people are consuming it. So I think that whole thing is changing, and I don't know where it's headed, but it's very different. And it also creates this content that exists outside of the entertainer or outside of the pundit class, where if you like, Troy, you talked about those Chamath fanboys, right? Like every one of these guys, Ezra has the same, right? The All In podcast is the same. You'll go to these folks' Discord and Reddit, and there's stuff happening around their celebrity and their content all the time by a community, all the time, very active. People fighting for them in the trenches, pulling stuff out from another podcast that somebody said about them and making sure that they see the clip.
You need a legion. Alex, you're developing a legion. Elon is developing his legion, and you're developing in your own way your legion.
That's right. Am I? Where you?
I get notes all the time.
I'm not seeing those numbers.
I think for growth, we need to throw Troy into the all-in Thunderdome.
That's what we need to do.
Let Sachs and Chamath maul him. And
do you think he's going to let Sachs red pill him? And then you've always been our Sachs, Troy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, those guys are brutal. The debate guys you don't want to get involved in with, because
Sachs is very good at what he does. He's very good.
He's debate club. Debate club is innocent. Any thoughts on this, Troy, before we move on to IP law and its discontents?
No, I think Alex did a good job. I mean, I think once again, we're seeing the cultural importance of a generation raised on gaming. And I think that visual is really influential to me, of like having the chat flow down the side while you're engaged with the headphone on, like in the media. I think that for a lot of people, the idea of sitting back and reading an article is lost on their generation. It's either coming at you via video, or you're participating in it, or you're making it, or you're engaged in some shape or form. And I think that it's kind of a requirement for the next generation of successful media.
This is why I am just as an aside, this is why I'm very excited for my upcoming online forum next week on email.
You end up positioning yourself as like a B2B grandpa. Like, you should cool it. It's not cool.
What are you talking about? It's very pertinent. You talked about it being participatory. The great thing about the online forum with Marigold about email newsletter personalization is that I've got one pane. It's like Destiny. I'm like Destiny on these things, except we're talking about email and open rates. And so we've got people incoming. We've got a lot of questions. We weave it in there. It's totally participatory. Otherwise, it's just like a video people watch live. Why would they want that? So you got to have the participation. Let's move on to IP law.
Just before we go.
Oh, what, you want the time? It's at 1 p.m. Eastern, Alex.
Yes, that's what I wanted.
Oh,
also, do you want to? I've talked to a few teachers, and my wife works in schools, and 90% of the kids, when you ask them what they want to be a streamer. They want to be a YouTuber. It used to be fucking astronaut, and now that is, and I'm pretty sure it applies across the board. And so if you're in media and you're trying to think like, where's the world change? Where's the world going? Those changes are profound, and we're seeing them, and it's not going to get any better or worse, depending on what.
Right. That's why some of the complaints on this I take with a grain of salt, the pearl clutching, because it's sort of boxing your own corner. You're just trying to crowd out competition. I mean, nobody wants more competition. Let's be real. People don't like change, and they don't want competition.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't be critical of the quality of the content, right? Sure. And I think that people like Chamath, for example, are the value per word from somebody coming from Chamath, when he steps outside of his lane, starts dropping pretty fast. There are some people who can carry over. You listen to Alan Tooze talking about anything from some 1813 German industrial strike to the Chinese economy, and he seems to know everything. But we should also remain very critical about the type of punditry that we have, because it's becoming more important. Because I don't think Rick Rubin talking about the military-industrial complex is something that we need in this world.
Yeah. Although I have my doubts. I have my doubts about Adam Tooze. Like, I think he's doing an academic parlor trick that's pretty adjacent to what Chamath does. No, I think that there's certain people, particularly in academia, that if you give them like 8 hours, they can like basically come out and
he does his research,
knowing everything about everything.
No, but that's right. Fine. He does his research, but I can't do that. Like, it's like saying, hey, can you come back tomorrow and juggle? I can't, but Adam Tooze can. He can juggle, and the next day he'll. Okay,
let's talk about IP law. Jack Dorsey, released. We talked about how you want to release memes these days, and he's pretty good at it. He's trying to be a Rick Rubin type. He's certainly looking more and more like Rick Rubin as the years go.
Yeah.
He just posted an X. Is that what we're calling it? A tweet, an X, whatever it is. Delete IP laws, and Elon agreed with this. And this is. Obviously, people get very upset about IP on both sides, right? And it is pretty clear, though, with where we're going, that IP laws will need to be modernized. And so the people taking like extremist positions on one side, to me, it's like free speech content moderation. It's like, come on, like, you got to be grown-ups, because this stuff is getting very, very, very messy. I mean, you look at the Studio Ghibli, is it Ghibli or Ghibli? I don't know, style, like art through
Ghibli.
ChatGPT, I can understand how the artists are very upset. At the same time, it was very fun to make a Studio Ghibli image of like Troy on the Mission Accomplished banner when GDPR fell.
Yeah, no, you know what else was fun? Napster was super fun. BitTorrent was super fun. I mean, I think it was great, but at the end of the day, somebody has to pay artists. And I'm not, and I don't want this to sound like I'm just like IP law, I think is perfect today, but you always have to look at people's motivations. And one thing's for sure is that because crypto didn't work out so well, Dorsey is now all in on AI because he's very much a legacy guy and he wants to have a legacy. I think you have to look at the motivations behind the things that they're saying.
Everyone's biased. Everyone has their own sort of, as what Nick said, like, he's got skin in the game now. Everyone's got skin in the game, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. So actually, there was a conversation with James Cameron, and he said something interesting that got me thinking about it, is that, in the age of AI, and I'm paraphrasing, what we're really going to have to do is look at the output and not the input. Which is the way IP has always worked, right? Like when I'm making my movie, I can use somebody's copyrighted material as something to inspire me. But once it goes out into the public, I need to have those rights. And in the same way with AI, I think we should be paying more attention to the outputs than the inputs. So the problem isn't really what these things ingest, but what you create with them. Now, I think it becomes complicated because, like, does that mean OpenAI should be forced to regulate the stuff because it looks like Ghibli, right? Or it looks like Disney, or it looks like a character that is copyrighted? But that's the type of stuff that's going to be very, very, very difficult. But it does mean that wouldn't mean such a huge rewrite of copyright law, but it would mean something. I don't know what I mean.
Agreed. Troy?
Well, first observation is saying extreme things, is the modern distribution tactic. So Jack can say, get rid of IP law, and Elon can agree with him. It's hard to, on some level, you can appreciate, again, these sort of, we're getting used to the kind of proclamations from, whatever, these, big thinkers that built things like that. We would be, that the death of IP would accelerate innovation and, get more people, kind of using other people's ideas to build on them and make things and propel us forward as a civilization. So I get it. I think what it also, Matt, to your point around, what are the motivations? I think it massively creates massive value for the aggregators, and who, if you're an AI company, the last thing you want is to wade through, a bunch of pesky IP litigation. So I think it makes sense. But you have to ask yourself, what happens to like pharma and entertainment companies when there's no longer incentives to invest and make things, to really do, kind of scaled innovation around an idea that can only be paid back through IP protection? And then we hear, some fuzzy principles that, we're going to use blockchain somehow to kind of register the provenance of an idea, and that will somehow protect, the creator. I don't really understand that very well.
I think the issue with all of these things is IP, like law, is a regulation. It's like anything. The regulations are just rules. These are rules, right? And rules are always twisted by incumbents to crowd out competition. They always are. That's why regulations, a lot of them end up being very well-meaning, but they end up doing the opposite of what they're intended to do, because incumbent players use that to make sure that they don't have to face new entrants. And IP law is typical of that. You see that the kinds of business process patents over the years and things like this entire area is rife with, true like waste, fraud, and abuse. And yeah, you want to have incentives for people to make breakthrough biotech, et cetera. But particularly when it comes to media and IP, it's pretty clear that the genie is not going back in the bottle with AI. But time will tell, as they say. Did you see Andrej Karpathy? I think he's actually an AI expert. I think he qualifies as one, right? He had an interesting post this week where he pointed out something kind of basic, but I think it's important, which is that at this point of AI adoption, like individuals are ahead of the enterprise. And I think originally it was, oh, this is going to flood the enterprise. But it seems like enterprise adoption is lagging behind what just individuals can do, because obviously individuals can move quickly. They're not siloed into like groups of supposed experts within a company. Individuals don't have legal departments, at least. They don't need permissions. And that's where the momentum is coming from. I thought this was pretty interesting. Is this how you see things developing, Alex?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's always the large company kind of change tax that needs to happen. I think sentiment around AI is generally negative, right? From every study that we're seeing. And it's been shown that people are reluctant to apply it to their work. A couple of weeks ago, we saw Toby from Shopify try to really engage the company by saying that performance reviews would be based on AI adoption. Seems to be working pretty well at Shopify, but I know it's not working well at other companies. I know it's creating chaos at other companies where people are like, I don't know where to use this. I'm being told to use this. It doesn't really work for me. And also, I think part of the thing is that the tools require a fair amount of flexibility and the qualities of like being able to try shit out, which actually don't apply really well to cooperative work at scale, right? So when you're like vibe coding something, your vibe code is not something that you can just merge into like the bigger code base and it's going to make a lot of sense. A lot of this stuff is messier, sloppy, it's less organized, it's harder to plan. So there's a lot of structural reasons why just being a solo developer right now, you can probably like do 80% more than you could before, because now you can do stuff that a designer could do. You could do stuff that an engineer could do. You could put all these things together, and working by yourself on your own code base is relatively straightforward. If you work in a group, it's actually much harder. Just like the tools themselves make all of this kind of harder. Yeah, so I think that you're definitely going to see like 2 or 3 person companies doing things that are going to be pretty substantial. Yeah, small teams right now have a huge advantage, I think. It's going to be hard to change large companies to adopt this stuff, like so hard.
Yeah, but this is another example of how being very lean and nimble, as lean as possible, is such a competitive advantage. And there's just so many different areas where the bigger you are, the more challenging it can be these days, it seems.
It's always been like that, though, right? Like the bigger the ship.
But I think what's disruptive about it, Alex, you make a great point about merging your vibe code into the code base of a company. And I think that that's written across every department. When you think about how legal responds to the request to enable an AI feature whose output is unpredictable in a big company litigious scenario, like it's a fuzzy, it's a technology that's the opposite of the history of most technology we use. It's not declarative. The results are unpredictable and fuzzy. But I think what it does do, and the point that he made in that X post was, I think in some ways it starts to it creates a really important new input into what modern industrial structure looks like, where you have far more companies that are built around a small, empowered group of people that are using tools at the individual level in a new way. So I watch, the example we brought up last week is how Brian works. And, I've seen, a new generation come into media companies and go, why are there so many people here? Like we don't need that many people. And I think we're seeing that in software, and we're seeing it all over the place. So it's probably great. Actually, it probably means you're going to get, it's kind of like the creator economy, and you're going to get, lots of innovation in the economy. And I think though, what you can't do at kind of micro scale, at least not yet, is the kind of, large scale Chinese type manufacturing that requires lots of people, lots of investment, incredibly sophisticated technology at scale. That kind of, those kind of companies, really benefit from industrial policy, huge amounts of investment, and lots of people.
It seems like we're going to have like armies of like 1 to like 10 person like companies and like a bunch of Foxcons.
Yeah. I was fascinated with this idea. Do you know this idea of dark factories?
No.
It's a concept that you see in China and places. It'd be really interesting to see where there's no lights on inside, because you don't need lights, because it's just robots working. Robots don't need lights.
Talk about dystopia.
Dark factories.
Is that what we're going to get?
I thought you were going to talk about ghost kitchens, but yeah, I think having a lot of the infrastructure now for software kind of works like the Foxconn industrial system, where, when you're making a piece of software, you're outsourcing a lot of the big stuff like the AWS, the server hosting, the AI itself, right? All of that stuff, the payment processing, all of these things that actually require big teams and a lot of legal experts and infrastructure and servers and stuff like that. All that stuff you can plug into, right? So the software environment is already made for that. So a small team can build something at real scale now.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Brian, it was interesting that Elon Musk is trying to create a baby factory, a one-man baby factory.
A legion, his own legion. Alex has his legion, and Elon is going a different
We should
direction.
stay in our lane. Apparently, you're not allowed to talk about Elon.
By making his own legion. To me, what was noteworthy, this was a Wall Street Journal, I guess it was an expose. They've had a few good ones on the Elon beat. They were the ones who got the apparent liaison that he had with former vice presidential candidate and Sergey Brin's ex-wife. This is a strange timeline we're living on. But the Wall Street
Street Journal,
he's
great. I just want to put for the record.
No, hold on, Alex. Let him make the point.
But the Wall Street Journal it's become friskier. I think we've mentioned it a few times here, but this is a great example. I don't think there was anything necessarily quote unquote wrong with the Wall Street Journal. It was just stodgy. It's the Wall Street Journal. And they brought in Emma Tucker, I guess it's been like a year and a half or so now. And I've noticed I think it's a much better and livelier read. That was a great story. This is most over-covered, overexposed individual in the history of humanity, probably at this point. And they came out with a new, original, and gripping story about him. So kudos to the Wall Street Journal.
Kudos. I would say cancel the New York Times and replace it with Financial Times and Wall Street Journal. It would be fun.
Where do you get your games?
It's too businessy.
Just get a games membership for connection.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's the media diet. That's your media diet.
Yeah, that one kind of like went over like a fart in an elevator. I thought it was going to be a little bit more better, but.
Should we have Anonymous Banker join?
Yeah, because I got to talk with Janice Min in like 20 minutes.
And I've got a hard stop now, so.
Okay, so let's swap out Alex. That's hard. What do you call it? Hot swap.
Say hi to Anonymous Banker for me.
Okay, great. We got AB on. AB, thank you for joining us. I want to talk about golf media because you're a banker, so you must know golf. And I think it's a very vibrant area. I don't golf, so I'm not totally in on it, but I keep getting notes about the different, like how interesting, like YouTube centric golf media is. And we're seeing a lot of like activities in this area. What's interesting about golf?
I think so. When people look at sports, they sort of group all of them together, but golf is unique. It's similar to like a Formula One in that there's effectively like 1.5 governing bodies, right? You have the PGA and LIV. So it's a streamlined ownership of the tournament component. And then the teams, or in the situation of golf, the players are all independent contractors. So you have a lot more flexibility when it comes to the participatory nature of the athletes in the content. Whereas in other sports like NBA, MLB, things like that, there's a lot more rules around how the athletes can participate. And the other thing that's really interesting about golf, I was looking up some of these numbers, the amount of people that play both on and off course, it's like 45 million people a year. So there's like 25 million people that are going to the actual golf courses, and then another large chunk that are going to like Top Golf and things like that. So between the media side where people are watching the sports and then playing them, buying all the equipment, it's a big industry.
But who are the, so I saw like Good Golf raised 40 million. And then
Yeah.
Full Swing, which is from Chad Mum, who encouraged me. He actually is the reason I got a pizza steal. I did a podcast with him over the pandemic, and he convinced me to get a pizza steal. But he started this with the former Puck CEO is in this too, called Full Swing. They raised 20 million. Who are the other players in this? Because there's a lot of them. We talked about that one guy.
There's a bunch of smaller YouTube channels. I think Good Golf. This is one of these, we've talked about this before, where some of these businesses have been in market trying to find capital or some M&A for over a year, and the market's come around to appreciating what can be done on the digital side. But what's interesting about both of these businesses is they have legitimate partnerships with like the actual league, in the sense of Pro Shop, the Full Swing business. It's like basically they're pulling out from PGA the production apparatus and then looking to stand up the digital side and then commerce. And then Good Golf has a partnership with one of the large networks. So they're focused on YouTube and going after this younger demographic, but they also have ties into the incumbents in the space.
Okay.
So they're, I think, looking, it's not just digital. They have an eye towards, and that's like one of the things that has to happen to get people to watch golf on TV, is to push the audience from digital back to the traditional media channels.
The commerce angle on it's interesting too, because there's this, not only is the sport something you can watch, by the way, legendary Masters last weekend, record numbers, great story for the people of Ireland, just incredible entertainment with Rory McIlroy winning that, coming from, a really uneven game to win it was great entertainment. But it really is a kind of unique lifestyle integration where, you watch, you play, you can live in the clothing. And as a result, we see commerce brands emerging around these media brands in ways that maybe will work better than it has elsewhere. Right? They're full on like lifestyle kind of integration with the sport.
I mean, and they're perfect for this content to commerce thing that has a rocky history. But I got a note from one of our listeners about this a few months ago. I'd mentioned it. Like, he talked about the YouTubers like Grant Horvat, and he's like selling clubs and whatnot. He's got licensing deals. I guess Bryson, Busted Jack. I don't know who these people are. Taco Golf. Do you know Taco Golf? That's another one.
But I mean, the good thing, if you compare this to like a UFC, right, that's also big among this 18 to 35-year-old demographic, the only way that sport is getting monetized is through like pay-per-view buys, right? The athletes, even though if you follow the UFC, there's notable names, there's very few endemic brands in the fighting game, and then all those athletes have a hard time getting sports deals, getting the sponsorship deals elsewhere. But golf is one of these things, like Troy mentioned, like you're going to buy a golf shirt, you're buying golf clubs. There's all these things that you're buying around participating in the sport, and people are actually playing golf. You're not going to go, maybe you join a UFC gym, but otherwise you're not going to really play the sport. And then more broadly speaking, brands love to be tied to the athletes, right? Car OEMs, like it's like tennis, and that it's a really brand safe space.
One other thing, this is not golf related, and that's, OpenAI had raised, I think, 40 billion a couple of weeks ago. At this point, it's interesting to me because, an AI company raising 40 billion is like, gets a little bit of attention for a couple of days, and then people just move on from it. But they have a lot of money, obviously, and they're now talking about building a social network, which gives me some amount of pause. But it is pretty clear that, at least to me, I think of them like, it seems like they're moving into being like a real product company. What is your analysis about what direction they'll end up going as a company?
I mean, the new model just came out, the O3, yesterday, and it's amazing, like the progression of the tech from just an output. Have you guys tried it?
It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the last one was like, people would term it the intern. This one feels like
what's weird is the
in terms
sort of
its
parasocial relationship you have with a piece of technology, because its beauty is in the nuance of how it responds to things, right? It's in the language and what it sounds like and how it assembles it, and it's really I find I gravitate to the OpenAI product just because I like the way they make the output feel.
Well, I trust that it remembers things. Before they even came out with this memory thing, I'm like, they have all my data. I've uploaded all my key data, and I'm always going to go to it. I'll go to Grok for a few things. Claude, no, I'm done with Claude. I'm just going all in on ChatGPT.
Well, that's one of the reasons that this social networking thing is interesting, because Grok is good particularly when you want to dig something out of X. And one of the reasons you might want your own social network is to kind of create your own native data repository.
I bring up the new model because I think that OpenAI will continue to get into more areas where it's sort of unintentional, but it just happens because of the power of the model. For example, we're testing right now a lot of the investment banking AI companies' platforms. And to justify the additional cost per seat, I've been just sort of testing between these more specialized platforms, which say we can go get better data, we know what you're doing, versus what OpenAI can do. And in a lot of cases, OpenAI is actually providing a better result.
You know what, on that, AB? You get a sense of how truly disruptive it is when you see it applying horizontally like that, better than a vertical company could do it. I noticed this in a simple way yesterday. I used to scan bottles of wine with Vivinio because I want to know the provenance and where to buy them or how expensive they were, that kind of stuff. Yesterday, I scanned it with OpenAI, with ChatGPT, and it was a better result.
100%. And so people use these analogies like when Google came out, it didn't try to get into every business line that it impacted because they had such a large opportunity to go after advertising. But in order for Google to move into any category, it was an intentional thing where they had to put people against it. I think what's completely different here, and I think what's going to catch a lot of people off guard, is the improvements in these models will just make, in the example I gave, these specialized finance products, like not that useful. Everyone's just going to be going to OpenAI, which is a weird.
You imagine also collaborative features where, let's say, I use projects a lot now, where I put a bunch of documents into a folder and essentially use it. I did it with the newsletter this week. I put a bunch of transcripts in there. But imagine that we had a project folder for this podcast. Imagine that you have a project folder for your neighborhood. Imagine that you have it for, a national, like any kind of project that requires people to put information in and share in a kind of common set of data. You can see social dimensions to that as a product, right? Where you can share across lots and lots of people.
So I would view that the social thing to me is like a distraction. I think that's Sam just messing with Elon. I think the more interesting news was them looking at buying Windsurf, which is like the coding.
That's a $3 billion
platform.
Apparently. But this is also, isn't this one of those like wrappers? I mean, at first it was saying don't build like rappers with a W, that don't build like, rappers, but like clearly there's value in some of these.
Yeah. And we don't know all the details. There might be a talented team there where Sam effectively has unlimited money to spend now, and he's going after 20 really good developers because he wants
$3 billion acqui-hires. We live in amazing times.
Yeah. Well, think about the original OpenAI deal with Microsoft. It was like $10 billion. And so I think that's what coding is probably one of the first things that is getting the biggest impact with these models, because coders are really good at prompting. And so it's like this positive. And so that's probably just a land grab and to starve off other competitors from leaning into that space. But I just think that the evolution of this tech is going to usurp a lot of wrapper business models that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and they have this like unique go-to-market in a specific vertical where the power of these models just kind of comes over the top and can do a better job.
Well, wouldn't this go back to our earlier conversation? Like if you're like Harvey in the legal community, now I'm getting definitely outside of any area of expertise, you're going to need to comply with literally so many different things. So like ChatGPT can, if I'm doing like some kind of like basic agreement or something, I might go to like ChatGPT ESQ, but you're going to need something a little bit more specialized in these fields, right? With all the regulations and
that's what I thought, right? And so on the finance platform side, I thought they would do a better job. They have access to a few data sources that OpenAI hasn't tapped into yet, but just the overall power of the technology is getting better results. So maybe it's more on the consumer side first, and then they start to go into Harvey-like scenarios.
Troy, any
on the
final
legal
thoughts
side.
before I regale everyone with my good product?
No, other than you can hear me, right, guys? This has been a
Yeah.
week of wonderful technology snafus. One thing I find interesting about the product evolution at OpenAPI is the need that will emerge to manage different identities. You don't have the same conversation in all aspects of your life. You might have a private one, you might have a public one, you might have a professional one. And I think there's going to be a lot of thought put towards, how you show up.
Well,
and-
it's going to
and-
understand that. I don't like. I have different projects for different like things that I wanted to focus on, but to me, that'll end up going away.
Well, it's
it'll be
almost like
software.
people using different Twitter accounts, right? For different things.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, no, I'm
Right.
handing good product over to you because I know you're passionate about turtles.
All right, this is experimental because I have a hard stop. I've been very into sea turtles lately because it is sea turtle season in Miami. There's a lot of sea turtle nesting that goes on here. And there's all these like warning signs up that you need to keep your lights low if you have a place on the beach. I don't, I'm across the street, but like I didn't really quite understand it. I went to ChatGPT and I learned a lot about it. It turns out that sea turtles are born with a single-use tool called a caruncle that is almost like one of those like IKEA tools. It's like you use it and then it's useless. And so they use that to bust out of the egg. And then they actually they wait a day and they feed off of the like sac juice and whatnot and get their strength up to make the dash, relatively speaking, to the ocean, where they then go off for decades. They can float like hundreds or even over 1,000 miles away. What's amazing is the female turtles make their way back using something called magnetic imaging of the Earth's magnetic field in order to find the exact location where they were born. And they return to then lay eggs to repeat the cycle. Decades later, can be 30 plus years later. Pretty remarkable, all because of the caruncle. I don't know where we take that.
Nowhere. It's perfect.
We'll go back to your woofers next week.
All right.
I have a good, can I do my
Go ahead.
good product? I know I'm not a regular, or I'm not on the podcast. I've been using this AI agent called Block It for scheduling. I think I showed it to you guys. And what's interesting is like, it can really pick up on the context and conversation. So people have tried these different scheduling bots before in the past, and they're always pretty shitty. But this one is better than like an assistant because I can talk to it and tell it what to do. And then you can have different sort of code words if you don't actually want to schedule a meeting with somebody, where it picks up on that and it will kind of just play around with that person to kind of push off ever doing a real meeting. It knows like when you're traveling, it knows to put time in between in-person and Zoom meetings. It just has it basically, they've captured all of the edge cases.
Nice.
And I think the most interesting thing, because it kind of shows you how these AI agents are going to be priced. When you do the demo and you do the 2-week trial, they give you like a range of pricing. So they say, hey, this is going to be between $150 and $500. And then once it's basically, you've started using it all the time, 2 weeks later, they come back and tell you the price and you're kind of already stuck using it. So
Wait, $500 total
a month.
a month?
Yeah. They say it's based on the number of meetings, but it's completely opaque pricing. They came back and kind of picked a price in the middle of the range saying you're right below a power user. This is what we think you need.
So wait, I thought that all of this AI stuff was going to make like SaaS obsolete, and because it's all bloated and overpriced. And now you're telling me that like Calendly is going to cost $500 a month.
Yeah, but this provides real utility.
All right, we should leave it there. I'm not happy, AB.
That's it for this episode of People versus Algorithms, where each week we uncover patterns shaping media, culture, and technology. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Vanya Arsenov. She always makes us a little clearer and more understandable, and we appreciate her very, very much. If you're enjoying these conversations, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It helps us get the word out and keeps our community growing. Remember, you can find People versus Algorithms on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week. See you guys later.
Bye.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you all.